Welcome to Pack Talk Podcast, episode 155. Today I'm honored to be joined by Mr. Jim Tracy, better known as the Grampian. And Mr. Tracy has a long history in a wide variety of things, but he also has a history with dogs. So we're going to be talking about all that today. So Mr. Tracy, Mr. Grampian, thank you for being here. And honored to have you.
It's my pleasure. I feel like I'm part of the pack now.
You are part of the pack, absolutely. And we love your shirt. You got the dog on your shirt.
Oh, yeah.
So you're 100% ready to go.
Rock and roll, baby.
Yes, sir. Well, give us a quick background on you, kind of, what happened after you graduated high school, some of the major life events you've had. You've been through a lot. You've done a lot. So kind of give us your highlights moving forward from there.
Well, even before I got out of high school, when I was a little kid, my grandfather had black labs, and he had working dogs. And he had a mind that was probably 20 or 30 years ahead as far as dog training. And so I got exposure really young, but then I ignored it for a long time. And I was a welder up in northern Minnesota. I said I like being a welder. I make good money. I want to keep doing that. And my future father-in-law said, "Where are you going to college?" And I'm like, "Anywhere you'd like, sir." So got married, went to college, graduated, went through a series of good to great jobs, and had a lot of mentors who surrounded me with great information. But I always had that seed that was planted that I needed a dog in my life. So lo and behold, I got 5 kids, lots of grandkids, and a long history now with yellow labs. And my grandpa had blacks, but my dad had a yellow. So I went with yellow, and I stuck with that. And I don't actually pick for color, but I love their ability to hide in cover. So
absolutely,
that was a kind of a dominant feature for me.
Awesome.
Anyway, started a business with my kid, was pretty successful at that, and now I'm speaking and writing books and do a podcast, and just basically I'm having fun doing what I always wanted to do, which is like impacting people's lives. So
absolutely, and you've done a awesome job of doing that. For anyone listening, if you haven't heard his podcast before, it is the Grampian. We did an episode recently on the Grampian talking about dog stuff, but you also have done you also have a history in flying as well, correct?
Yeah. Again, that was a seed that was planted a long time ago, and it just lay dormant until I was 47. It started flying when I was 47. I was with my dad, and I said, "When's the last time you were up in a small plane?" And he goes, "Oh, years and years and years ago." And he was 80 or just climbing up on 80 when I asked him that question. That was in April when I took him on his first flight the following October.
Holy cow!
Or his first flight with me anyway.
Right.
and that blossomed into work. Getting a plane for a business, and that transitioned to a little bigger plane, and then a jet, and now I'm just enjoying flying.
Awesome. Have you flown any helicopters or just fixed wing?
I have flown some rotorcraft.
Okay.
I think that life is better in a glider with a motor than it is with a rock with a rotor. So
that's what I've heard.
And it's ignorance that creates that tentativeness, because you auto rotate those things and they fly just like a glider. So, and probably sit down gentler too.
I'll tell you, when I was in the Navy, we were launching helicopters off of moving warships, and there's nothing crazier but also cooler than being in some rough seas and you see that deck. The flight deck's doing this, and you got to land on that thing. And I remember the first time I landed on a ship while I was riding a helicopter, and I was just holding on. I was like, I hope these pilots know what they're doing,
What ducks can come up at you like 30 feet, and so now you're either trying to land on something that's coming at you or land on something that's going away from you, and there's not a lot of ebb tide in there to get it perfect.
Absolutely. Hats off to those guys,
No kidding. And thanks you for your service.
Oh, yes, sir. Absolutely. Well, let's talk about dogs. So the black labs that I've worked with versus a yellow lab or a chocolate lab, they generally tend to have more energy. Have you seen that in the dogs that you've been around, at least with your the dogs that you were growing up with, the black labs versus the yellow labs you have now?
Yeah, I think that breeding makes all the difference, and I don't, and you know, you get those chromosome crosses, and I don't think it has more to do with how their parents were. So, like, if you're going to buy a dog, go meet his parents first. So that's always number one, because they're going to end up looking and acting something like one of those parents. So if you can see both of them, that's great. Or if they have a background, or if they're good competitors, they're probably going to have high energy. And that's a good thing in my world, as long as it's under control. I don't think it has a lot to do with color, but you look at like chocolate labs. Chocolate labs have been bred almost specifically for color. And so their hunting gene has diminished from my perspective over the years. So I've seen a lot more good blacks and yellows than chocolates or so. So no, I haven't seen a difference in energy. A lot of people would tell you that my dog's are a little crazy, but it's really important to have crazy under control.
Exactly. You got to have that working drive for this kind of stuff that you're doing, you know?
Yeah.
How closely did you work with breeders when you were selecting dogs or choosing breeders? What was kind of your process when you first got involved with selecting dogs from breeders?
Yeah. Well, like most people, when I first started out, I made mistakes, and I selected from backyard breeders thinking that price was the most important thing. And it's actually, at the end of the day, probably the least important thing, because in many ways, like with good trucks, you get what you pay for.
Exactly.
And I'm not trying to diminish people who breed specifically, but if it's purposeful, and they're not and the breeders who really actually do a great job are not doing it for the money. Because if they were doing it for money, there's not that much money in it when you do it right. So,
Exactly.
I have a friend, and he's in my book. He's chapter 16 is written all about him, and he bred dogs specifically so they would be companions in the field and stars in competition. And when that's what you breed for, that's what you get. So
yeah.
My wife actually bought my second dog for me, and I didn't actually want it. So that it happened after an accident. So lo and behold, here I am stuck with a lab.
There you go. And it's like, hey, I guess this is what we're doing right now.
Yeah, I guess.
So when you first got exposed to hunting dogs, that was with your father, you said?
My grandpa.
Your grandfather, right? Yeah. So kind of walk us through that when you were first exposed to them. Were you really interested, or you're like, hey, this is what Grandpa's doing, I want to kind of follow and watch and spend time with Grandpa and what he's doing? What kind of got you interested over the years from that early exposure into continuing, basically what he was doing as time went on?
Yeah, some of the things that his dogs could do. Now, I had a grandpa, he loved big black male labs. And he taught that dog literally how to jump a 3-wire barbed wire fence. And so his dogs, other dogs would go in and go under it. His dog would just take a flying leap over it. It was crazy. And they would do it on command. Yeah. So it was fascinating to me that he could get this animal to do remotely what everybody else was like, get that dog on a leash, you get that dog under control. And he was using a whistle before whistles were in vogue, I guess. He even had he had one of those old silent whistles.
Okay.
And that was pretty cool. So the cool factor was kind of it with watching my grandpa.
Yeah.
And as he got older, he got a little bit more lax on the obedience issues and stuff like that. But he still had that cool factor.
Yeah.
So it was cool. So that's what draws people in. An obedient dog will draw people in more than anything that I can't even imagine. If you have an obedient dog and people ask if they can pet him, and your dog is at heel on a sit, and you say, turn your hand so your palm is up, and approach the dog slowly, and sure, you can pet him. Now, labs don't have much bite response. So
Right. They're generally safe to
pretty
walk
safe.
up to.
Yeah, pretty safe.
Yeah, like you said, we'll be walking through, or, even people that I work with, we'll be walking through a farmer's market, their dog's in heel next to them. They stop to buy something at the market. The southern apple pies down here are really good, but you get something from the market, you stop, your dog sits next to you, well behaved. All the other dogs in the market, they're pulling they're walking the owner, they're walking all over, they're pulling the lady over, and people, it like you said, people stop in their tracks. Oh my gosh, what a well-behaved dog, then most people want to ask to pet it. So,
and then they always ask that silly question, how did you do that?
Right.
Well, I did it 15 minutes at a time for 5 years.
Exactly. So when you were younger and you were hanging out with your grandpa, was he teaching you how to teach dogs, or were you just watching him?
I was just taken in. I think that he was a man of very few words, and so as I observed him, I would probably ask questions. I wasn't very old, so it was, and it was a long time ago now.
Right.
But I just remember being enamored by the way the dog acted and the way you could tell that. I mean, he had a really, really cool dog because at one time his name was Tor. All of his dogs were named exactly the same, Tor. And, we would call it Thor, Thor, but he called it Tor. Anyway,
Right.
He would teach these big labs. They would walk up and they would twist a knob and open a door. And he had a dog that would walk up and flush a toilet and take a drink. and it doesn't matter. That's just cool.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people are going to go, that's really gross. I'm like, well, yeah, kind of, but
Right.
at least he was drinking fresh, cool water.
Right. Opening the door is cool until it's not when you want it to be open,
Until it's not cool. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what age did you actually start getting into dog training yourself or working with dogs at a higher level? Do you remember?
When I started working with dogs, I was probably in my late 20s.
Okay.
When
And
I
you
got
started
good
getting
at
into
it,
yellow labs at that point?
I had one black and then
Okay.
yellows after that. And the black lab I bought from a backyard breeder, and it turned out to have dysplasia very badly. And so it couldn't work without dislocating. So rather than put it down, I gave it to a family who took care of it. And the dark dog Magnum lived 13 years or something like that.
Oh, wow.
He was really happy doing, he turned into a couch dog. They didn't let him get
Right.
overweight. So it had a happy ending. But,
Exactly.
but that brought me into a better shopping realm.
Right,
say.
exactly.
And that got me my first yellow lab. That started probably early 30s. Yeah.
Okay. And the main purpose of your dogs is hunting, correct?
At first, yeah, especially.
Right.
And then with my second dog, that one died in an accident and in a car accident.
Okay.
And that taught me to not use a strapped down plastic crate in the back of a truck. Now I
Right.
have a aluminum box that's bolted to the bed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But when I lost that dog, it was a terrible time.
Right.
And the long and the short of it is I didn't want another dog because it hurt so bad. And my wife went out to the East Coast, found a top tier breeder, and bought me a fantastic dog. And I even named it the same because I didn't want to call it by the wrong name.
Right.
So I literally just kind of ignored the dog for 6 months. And because it was just kind of painful. And,
Yeah.
I went out to a competition, and my wife had entered me in it, and
She said, "Hey, by the way, I signed you up."
by the way, I signed you up. Yeah, and it was the North American Hunting Retriever Association, or NARA. And I went out and I sent my dog out on a started test, and it went out and it took one sniff of that duck and turned around and said, "If you think I'm putting that in my mouth, you're crazy." So I hadn't really done anything with it, but I sat there and watched the guy I talked about earlier, Harry Williams. I watched him run a yellow lab, and it was magical. And I thought, at the end of the day, after I watched him, I thought, who is that guy? Who is that dog? How do they do what they do? I got to learn to do that. And I was hooked. I was like totally hooked. And I called him and I said, will you train with me? He goes, nah, I don't know if you're serious or not. And I'm like, no, I'm serious, man. And, and so he held a standard incredibly high, and then he required me to do training with the dog that would supplement all that he was coming alongside me with. And he was an amateur. He wasn't a pro trainer. So he's an amazing trainer. I'd put him in the category of trainer. Yeah. And expert handler. And I'm not a trainer. I'll claim to be a handler, but I'm a guy who needs some help when it comes to training. So
right, for sure. Yeah. Well, if you don't mind me asking about the accident, I know like when people lose a dog, right, whether it's from an accident or something that they didn't anticipate happening, or even from old age, it's really hard to move on, like you've been describing. Yeah. The grief of because that's a strong companion. Dogs are unlike anything else, the way they bond to us and are with us. But you brought up how you had your dog in a plastic crate, and this is something that a lot of people are doing. I'm down in the South. I know where you're at too. People are transporting their dogs around, sometimes in the back of their trucks in those plastic crates. Yeah. Do you mind telling us, you don't have to say the brand of the crate you were using, but like, can you kind of describe the crate and what you pivoted to ensure safety for your dog in the future moving forward?
Yeah, sure. So it was just a standard plastic crate. I wouldn't remember the brand name anyway, but you've seen them at every pet store you go to, probably every Walmart, whatever. Right. And so I was actually on a deer hunting trip with my son. And we'd got our deer, and we were headed home from South Dakota back to Washington. It's Washington State. And there was ice on a bridge. So there was clear black ice on a bridge, and then it was dry up to it, and then black ice, and then dry after it. And he had cruise control on, and it spun the truck out, and we hit the bridge, like T-boned it with the front of the truck, and that launched the dog and both deer down under the railroad tracks below. And the dog was in the crate. So obviously the dog didn't make it. It was a 65-foot drop, and totaled the truck. And so when I went to, I started looking for boxes, and I'm like, I'm not doing that again. So after my wife got me another dog, I said, this one, at least, if nothing else, I ain't gonna kill it. So, so I went to ProTech Industries, and I got a custom-made dog box that bolts literally onto the bed of the truck. Okay. And is bomb-proof. But the cool part about it is, especially if you're down south, the ambient. I put a separation between there's two lids in it, and I put a separation between the lids, and I put vented bar doors on it. It stays about 10 degrees cooler when it's hot out, and it stays about, and I have a neoprene mat on the bottom of it that stays about 10 degrees warmer when it's cold out. Nice. So it's been magnificent. It's made it through. It's a 2-dog box, goes across, and it looks like a toolbox. So it's pretty amazing.
Awesome. So that's a ProTech you're using now, is what you said? That's the brand?
Yeah, I've been using it for, I would guess 20 years now.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Good to know. Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Going back to you starting to get back into training. So when you met this guy, and he started working with you, can you tell us a little bit about when you started working with him, some of the big lessons you were learning as you were learning from him as a trainer?
Sure. Well, the big lessons are always starting with little lessons. Number one, regardless of what your dog does, you could be a show dog, you could be a competing dog, you could be a hunt tester, a field trial dog, it doesn't matter. If you don't have obedience, you've got such a significant blockage in your way. And so, say, sit, come, stay, sit, come are all so essential. And what Harry taught me is sit doesn't mean sit. Sit means slam your butt to the ground, get your feet in front of you, look at me, and don't move until I say something else. And that to me was kind of a foreign concept, because I was always sit, stay, like easy, now
Right.
don't move. And a simple command has to have a simple result. And it's actually easier for the dogs to understand sit and what it means than it is sit, stay, don't move, down, easy, whatever other adjectives you're throwing at it. When sit means sit, plop your butt down fast, look at me, keep your front feet still. All of a sudden now the communication is clear. And then you transition that to a whistle, where a single blast means even if you're far away from me, that you spin around, slam your butt into the ground, put your feet towards me, and look at me intently.
Right.
And all of a sudden now, when you do that, when you have a dog that snaps around like that, it's because the dog wants to please you. It's because the dog wants to both of you have achieved the same goals. And when you're clear like that with a single whistle blast or a single word, is way, way, way better than some of the other, sit, sweetie. I really want you to sit because I love you, and I'll give you a hug, and I'll give you a pat, and I'll give you it's like, no, just sit.
Right, exactly.
So it all starts with obedience. All the foundational stuff that I learned at Harry took me away from everything. And there's a book by Richard Walters called Water Dog. And he said, take this book home and read it and do everything it tells you in the order it says. And if you can do that, you'll have a dog that's better than 95% of the rest of the dogs. And then if you do all that and you're better than 95% of the rest of the dogs, you come and work with me and you'll be better than 99% of the dogs. And what he said was absolutely positively true without any question. We went to 13 NARA Invitationals and Canadian Master National, and got our AKC Master Hunt Test title, and did all that with a first-time competitor and a first-time handler. So it was pretty.
That's a
spectacular.
big deal. That's
the
a big
result
deal.
was pretty spectacular. And that wasn't one dog. That was the first dog made it through 4 of them. So
Okay, gotcha. So as you're learning, you're doing this obedience. You said earlier, hey, 15-minute sessions for 5 years, right? So basically what you were doing was short sessions throughout each day, slowly working on progressing your behavior and progressing to the next thing that you wanted to work on. Is that basically how you developed your behaviors and built them up over time?
Exactly. And when the dog wants more, that's when you want to stop. However, their appetite for more will grow and grow and grow and grow. And pretty soon you're doing 15 minutes, but the dog really wants an hour and a half.
Right.
So what you're developing in that dog is a taste and a flavor for training, because they love what they do. And they like, just simply throwing a bumper, for a retriever. It was built by God to go out and pick up something and bring it back to you. And so there's so much innate drive that's already there that all you're trying to do is channel it a little bit and establish some command and control so that the dog will trust you. And that becomes really important, because sometime later you're going to say, go get that thing. And there's nothing that the dog saw. There's nothing that happened. Like nobody shot a duck out of the air. And it's made to simulate that somebody shot one and it's down and you know where it's at, but the dog doesn't. And so you're using voice and whistle commands to say, trust me, go there and you'll find a prize. And when the dog starts to believe you, because you've done it repeatedly and incrementally longer and farther and things like that, all of a sudden they take off like a rocket right where you told them. So
and that's a cool thing. I'm about to say it's a cool thing to experience right there. Yeah. Especially after you put all the work into it, And time.
When I went through, and it wasn't automatic, I went through the junior level after working with Harry, and I was like 4 for 4. And then you get a little title, you get a started retriever title, and then they take you to the next level and intermediate. And then I was 4 for 4 in that. It was like, hey man, this is easy. I went 0 for 11 when it came to the master level. When you hit that next level, now some people it's going to be earlier, some people it's going to be later, but when you hit that master level, and you just feel like a complete and total, utter, epic fail, man. But I had guys and gals that came alongside me, and they said, "Hey, man, you're almost there. You're so close. Just keep going." And that encouragement is pretty important.
For sure. Were you doing any type of special conditioning for your dog, like swimming, running, wearing weighted vests to prepare for, extensive physical exercise or physical demands?
Yeah, I think that the best exercise for a Labrador, because of hip and joint issues, because they are jumpers, and so is swimming, and so I would take that dog in particular for long swims, and then later we had a lake cabin, and I would actually, that's how I started my puppies. I would get in a kayak and I would leave them on the end of the dock, and they don't have to come in. And I paddle away, and they're like, "Oh, boss, you're leaving me." At one point, I had a 10-week-old puppy that launched himself off the dock into the water and did the puppy swim. And now we're going out, and I do a 1/4 mile paddle with my big dogs, and a 1/4 mile paddle. So there's a 1/2 mile of swimming, which is good conditioning, and it doesn't do anything bad to the joints. And I got this puppy in the water, and I got to turn around, go back, and get the puppy because it ain't going to swim a 1/4 mile. But when the dogs go into the water because they want to go into the water, then they have no fear. They have no fear of the water. They never are reticent again after that. As a matter of fact, after that, it's hard to keep them out of the water.
Right, exactly. They see water, they're going for it. You're like, not today.
Not today, yeah. Then then your house smells like a wet dog.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's what a lot of the hunters down here in the South do. They swim their dogs. A lot of the deer hunters and everything, they're swimming their dogs. For that conditioning specifically. Good for the dog, good for us too. Yeah. Because like you said, it takes that pressure off your joint. You're kind of like in zero gravity essentially. Yeah. You can kind of move through that water and exercise in a different way. Huge benefit for sure.
Exactly. And to that point, I never allow my dogs to jump off of the truck. Because when they hit, they're coming down from 2.5 feet or whatever, and they're stopping themselves with their shoulder joints. Right. And so I always help them down. And it's just grab their collar, let their back legs hit first. But I always encourage them. I never lift them up into the truck. If they're not enough athlete to get in the truck, they're probably not going to want them. I don't want them hunting anyway. So
exactly.
Good. Just tip. And it doesn't matter what kind of dog you got. Don't let it jump out of a truck. It's not healthy.
That's a good point.
Elbows.
Good point for sure. Did you have any kind of like after field protocol where you would rinse out their eyes, check their body? What were you doing after the field? To make sure your dogs were in tip-top shape and keep track of any potential injuries they might have incurred?
Sure. Number one, it doesn't matter where you are. If you're hunting in the fall, before frost, get a good tick and flea preventative, because you're going to, depends on where you go. You're not going to want heartworm. You're not going to want fleas and ticks and stuff like that. But number two, when you're done hunting your dog, you always ought to run your hands over them. That's the best inspection you can do is just to run your hands, because even if they got a little cut on the underbelly, you'll get a little dab of blood there, and you're like, oh, that hurts. So let's put something on that. And I use a antibiotic cream, or it depends upon what it is, or simply a little Vaseline on the bottom, just to and always inspect between their pads. There's out in the West, I don't know about where you're at, but out in the West, there's these little plants that have seeds on them with barbs, and they stick in there. And you can wake up in the morning, that paw could be twice the size it was when you went to bed just from infection. So you're just inspecting. Same thing with the nose. It sounds stupid, but look up their nose, because they're running through dry cover, sniffing. They're trying to bring in as much air as possible to get particulates of a pheasant or a quail or a grouse or a duck or whatever. And so they're bringing in a tremendous amount of junk. And that's why, like, when you're working a dog and you hear him sneeze, I'm like, good, that's good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always like flushing out their eyes, like keeping the saline solution, because like you said, their head's down. They can get a lot of things in their eyes, and we want to protect those too. But crazy story, I had this one dog one time running through the brush and ended up with like a stick or something up into its nose cavity. Had to go to the vet to get it pulled out, but that was insane. Like got up into the nostril and just shoved back there. So things happen, when you're out working dogs and out in different places. What about snakes? Did you ever have any snake encounters with your dogs, or did you do snake aversion training with them?
I've done some snake aversion training simply because we're in the West, and these dogs are so fast. Like if you're hunting chucker, you're going to find snakes, and the moment, they can smell them way farther than they can see them or hear them. And so but they will let you know when a snake is there, and it helps the handler too, because I'm walking behind him, and if I see him avoid an area, then I'm going to go, wow, there's probably a reason for that.
Right. Big old rattlesnake sitting over there or something,
Yeah.
Don't want to tangle with one of those puppies.
Yeah. And especially like, I can remember one time we were heading it was before youth season. And so it was really early. So before youth duck season, and I was going to bring my boy out. So I went and I was going to check out this pond, make sure there was some water in it. Let's kind of creep up and look over the hedge. So I have my dog's at heel, and all of a sudden the dog stops. And I'm like, and so when I tap my leg, it means come up here.
Right.
And she's like, and I'm like, oh, stupid dog. And I took one more step and I heard the rattle.
Oh,
and it was like 2 feet from me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I should have listened.
Right.
And I didn't get popped, and the dog didn't get popped, but we didn't have a gun with us or anything like that. So it could have been pretty bad.
Right. Yeah. I always tell people, and this too, but if your dog is normally acting, like you said, your dog's normally good at healing, you're healing with your dog, then some way out of somewhere, it acts abnormal. Instead of saying, you learned your lesson, but you're like, hey, stupid dog, get up here or whatever. You're like, oh, let me pause. My dog is acting abnormal. There might be something I need to pay attention to around me.
Yeah. No
How'd you do your snake aversion training? Did you have a trainer come out with a snake and do that with you, or how did you do it?
I belong to an incredible dog club called the Spokane Bird Dog Association, and this isn't necessarily a plug for them, although I would love to plug them. This is a plug for all dog clubs. If you've got, especially the volunteers who are part of those dog clubs, if they're helping other people with, and it doesn't matter whether you're doing agility, whether you're doing defense, it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you join part of a dog club, there's 20% of the volunteers doing 99% of the work, and you can learn a tremendous amount from them, and you can help. So I would encourage that too. It doesn't matter. If Chad's doing your training, all you're going to do is actually spend more time with your dog, and that's going to make you a better handler. Because as my friend Dan Hosford always told me, the problem is seldom the dog.
100%. I learned that lesson the hard way myself. That's how I got into training. But I've heard of some snake trainers out in Arizona. Actually, I knew a guy who had a rattlesnake that was his pet, but he had the venom glands removed, so it could not envenomate you, or whatever it's called, actually inject venom if it bites. But we work with the guy, he's out of Georgia, but he runs a reptile rescue, and he brings copperheads, water moccasins, and rattlesnakes, which are the most common in our area, up for our annual snake aversion training. So I always enjoy seeing the ways that different trainers are doing it. I actually, when I was stationed out in California, took my dogs to a snake aversion training. This was before I was a trainer out in California. They had live rattlesnakes just laid out on the ground. They had the snake stick, and they're just kind of keeping it contained with the snake stick. And, the dog would walk by it, and they would, create the avoidance response with the
stimulation.
Exactly. So very good way to do that. But like you said, it creates that response to where the dog, like you gave the perfect example. The dog's like, I'm not going anywhere near that. Right. Yeah. And that is much safer and better than actually getting a bite. Sure. You have to rush to the ER. You don't know how many vials of antivenom you need. And we're talking about expensive too. I think when they pop one of those puppies open, it's several $1,000s.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, $2,500. That's $12.50 a fang.
that's crazy. That's crazy. Well, could you give us some, out of everything you've learned over the years with working with your dogs, can you give us some takeaway tips for people that have dogs but are not doing retrieve training or are not doing hunting training, but maybe they have a lab? Maybe they have, another breed that typically does those types of roles. And you know how today's world is. We have breeds all over America, all over the country, actually, all over the world, that are not really doing what they were originally bred for. They're a pet dog, but they still have those instincts, right? So do you have any tips for the average person based on your experience?
Well, number one, especially with Labradors are super friendly animals, and they want to come up and they crave human contact. And when they do that and it's appropriate, cool. Mm-hmm. But when it's inappropriate, a lot of times I've seen labs that'll come up and they jump, and they come up to you and they jump and then they push off of you. Mm-hmm. And so I had one lady in particular who's like, I can't get my dog to quit jumping on me. I'm like, okay, so let me show you. And so I said, now you go sit on the porch and watch me. And I put her dog on a lead. And then because he wanted to keep going back to her. So I put him on a lead and I took him out in the driveway and I said, here. And then I pretended like I was going to lean over to him, but then I stood mm-hmm. up. And as soon as I stood up, he exhibited that jumping response. Mm-hmm. And he's like jumping up and his muzzle's like right here. And I just brought my knee up and I mm-hmm. hit him kind of like underneath the rib cage. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't hard, but it was uncomfortable.
Just enough.
And then he did it again and I did it again. And then mm-hmm. he did it again and I did it again. And then he didn't do it again.
Right.
And so then I'm like, okay, now you saw what I did. Well, and she was like, well, I don't want to hurt him. I'm like, you're not going to hurt this knucklehead. Trust me. So put him on a lead, had her come out and had her actually bring her knee up. Mm. And it didn't take 3 times.
Right.
Because now he believed that would be the response. And so now in a 4 knee session, you've got a dog that's beginning to learn that there's a price to be paid if you jump up on somebody because it's rude. And so those kind of things, it's particularly troubling to someone like me when they see a person who's being taken for a walk by their dog. Mm-hmm. It is so easy to get them to stop that, but you've got to be willing to make them pay a price for acting that way. They're only pulling because, hey, they think that God made them a sled dog.
Right.
And so they're like, and if you pull on me, I'm going to pull on you harder because that's what sled dogs do.
Right.
And so if you, I'm not a person who uses those pinch collars. I don't have anything against them. I just have never been around them enough to know. But I pop that leash. I don't say, I'm going to pull hard at you. I'm going to say, if you do that, I'm going to pop your neck.
Right.
And mine are flat collars, so it's not going to choke them.
Right.
But it's going to go like this. They're going, well, that wasn't fun. And then they pull again and you go like that. And they say, that was really not fun. And so if a dog understands that there is automatically and irrevocably a price to be paid every time for poor behavior, then they're going to stop that behavior. Not because they're smart, because they don't want discomfort. It's no different than snake avoidance. They don't want to get near a snake because it's not fun next to a snake.
Right.
It's, And so there's so many things that people can do so that their dog, when you tell a dog to sit, if it gets up, then you approach the dog, lift its chest, push its butt down, and say sit. But it's not a request; it's a command.
Right.
And often, I think people these days think that their dogs love them more because they speak to them in falsetto.
Right.
There's a time for that, and it's probably next to the couch, but it's not out in the mall. When you're socializing a dog at the local farmer's market, that's not the time to say, "Oh, Pumpkin, I think you should be a good dog," instead of ruining that other person's time. It's sit down and be quiet. Yeah.
Absolutely. I always say your dog will only do what you allow it to do, right? So if you allow it to pull on the leash because you didn't teach it to not pull on that leash, we could call that leash pulling avoidance training, right? But, if you allow your dog to break that sit, it will keep breaking the sit. If you allow your dog to jump, it will keep jumping. If you allow your dog to steal that ribeye off your counter that you just prepared for dinner, now your dinner's gone and you're pissed,
Yeah,
that's happening.
$40.
Right. That's happening because you allowed your dog to do that. So that's what I tell people, and so the other thing, like you said, we have to be consistent though. If one day we tell the dog sit and we make sure that it sits, but the next day we tell it to sit and we let it get up and blow off that sit, we just took 2 steps forward, 5 steps back.
Yeah.
So it's being consistent as well with the dog.
And that's not really fair to the dog either, because the dog does something and he goes, I wonder if I'm going to get hit this time. I wonder if I'm going to get nicked this time. I wonder if I'm going to get kneed this time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And so that creates anxiety in the animal.
Exactly.
Discipline creates consistency, because these are creatures that are creatures of habit. Doesn't matter what anybody says, any dog, if you train it to do the same thing over and over again, then that's the result you're going to get.
100%. 100%. Another question before we pivot to talk about Canine Meats. What were you feeding your dogs? Do you remember the food when you were doing your heavy training and hunting and retrieving? Do you remember what foods you were feeding?
I went when I first started. I was using a product from Purina. It was Purina Pro Plan.
Right.
And I good, bad, and different. I don't know, but since then I've gone to a 26. It's called Kinetic. It's a 26% protein. The reason I feed that is that when I work dogs, they work pretty hard.
Right.
So if you go, we got a pond right out in our front yard, and I'll throw a bumper as far as I can, and it just barely makes it over the other side. Set the dog on down a bank and into the water on a swims, 250 feet, and then grabs the bumper and comes back another 250 feet. Well, you do that 10 times, that's a mile.
Right.
And so we're burning a lot of protein. And, and it's been really good to us. It's called Kinetic.
I've heard good things about them.
On, what is that? Chewy, I guess.
Yeah. I've heard good things about that food. And they make different percentages based on I'm pretty sure, based on the amount of work you're doing with your dog. Like an active dog needs way more than a dog that's less active.
Yeah.
So, super cool. Well, let's talk about Canine Meats. Can you tell us about Canine Meats?
Before I do, I'm going to tell you about the Canadian Master National.
Okay.
When you compete with people, it's a great idea to know the rules. I went there with my dog Maggie, and we were the class. Everybody was looking at us, and they were going, ooh, and ah. And so this is a 5-day competition, and and everybody thought this is going to get easier. And every day it got harder. And now it might have been a 6-day competition. Anyway, we come to the last day, and I've completed every event, and we literally, they don't place dogs in a hunt test. You either meet the standard or you don't. But we are just clearly the class of the event.
Right.
And the last thing that we have to do is called honoring. And so I'm honoring, and I'm sitting there with my dog while another dog works, and we have to watch it. It's a really easy honor because I'm up off a bank, and they're way down there next to you. Well, my dog did not ever move. Her feet never moved on an honor. When she was on sit, she was just good as gold.
Right.
But she couldn't see the other dog. And they throw a series of dead ducks or live ducks and shoot them. But anyway, they throw a series of birds out there, and the dogs watch them all go down. And then my dog went she just took her feet and she just shifted to the left a bit. Well, she did it so that she could see the other dog. Now, me being a knucklehead handler, I said, sit. In Canada, you may not speak to your dog on the honor. And so even though we had clearly clearly already passed the test. They have to honor the rules, and you're out.
Oh,
Guess what?
okay.
Guess what? It's the handler's fault for not knowing the rules. So that was my very first Canadian Master National, and I seriously, anytime anybody gets to get involved or engaged in any type of a national event, do it, man. It's like no rush you'll ever experience.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Pretty crazy, cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, Canine Meats.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, my son is a rancher, and his son, my grandson, saw all these liver, heart, kidneys, organs that were being they're being sold for next to nothing, but they're super great crude protein for animals, and so he found a way to take all the bacteria out of them and then freeze dry them and then package them for dog treats. And so, shameless plug. Here's Canine Meats. It is a raw beef liver that with zero bacteria. That's USDA, or I forget all the human grade.
right, exactly.
And they are the best dog treats. They liver, heart, and kidneys, and they are the best dog treats that are. My dogs actually love them. Even my wife's Schnauzer even.
Hey, that's how you know they're good if the wife Schnauzer's going for them, you know?
Hey, there you go. Yeah, because a lab will beat virtually anything, right? Yeah. But no, I haven't found anything that is a better, healthier way to give my dog a treat. And it's for my grandson, so it makes it cool. It's caninemeats.com. The letter K, the number 9 meats.com. And they're available pretty soon in your grocery store. And some grocery stores out west, and we're moving east.
That's awesome. So he figured out this himself. I'm sure he leaned into you for some guidance.
You know, he after the fact, he had already gotten dehydrators. I mean, this kid is a student, man, and he got the way to take the bacteria out, and then he freeze dried them, his first batches himself, and then he sends me this silver Mylar bag. He says, "Tell me if your dogs like these," and I'm like, "What are they, man? They're just like I wrinkle a bag, and I'm surrounded by canines, bro."
That's cool.
And then he expanded it to do. He started out with the liver because that's the largest organ, but then he's like the heart and the kidneys are, and he actually did. I got to tell you, guaranteed analysis, crude protein, minimum 67.8%.
Holy smokes!
Well,
super
if you
high.
Think about that. It's there's very little fiber, like 0.6% moisture. So you're getting something that the dog, and it's good for its teeth. It's no,
Oh, for sure.
There's no sugar, no cereal, no grain, none of that stuff that dogs. If you look at a wolf will go in and they're going to dive into the guts of a elk or a deer that it's killing, and they're going to dive into the guts and they're going to go after 3 organs. The liver, the heart, and the kidneys. Kind of in that order. So it's maybe God intended them to feed it this way, just not freeze dried. I don't know.
Hey, freeze dried's a good way to preserve it, as far as all the things I've looked into.
Super long shelf life, and we had a dog that this owner came up to us and she said, "I can't. It's got tooth problems, so I can't feed it." And Gus was like, "Throw it in a little water. It unfreeze dries that quick." Right,
which is crazy. You know.
And they were thrilled. So
yeah, for sure. Has he looked into tripe at all? Tripe is kind of the intestine of the cow, and a lot of the raw food companies are incorporating tripe in the raw food because of its high nutritional content. I don't know with his dad being a rancher, if he has access to tripe. Has he talked to you about that at all? Do you know?
He has. That right now they're exploring. They're going to call it Canine Meats Black Label, but it's spleen, because the spleen is the place that stores blood in mass in any type of a organism, and so it's in many ways it's got the same nutritional components as the liver, and no one wants it. And so you look at that, and so but it's hard to sell spleen on a grocery shelf.
Right.
So it's gonna be Canine Meats Black Label, And,
Nice.
And so if you want to read the ingredients on the back, then you can find out what it is.
That's super cool. And so your son is a rancher. Are people able to purchase his meat, or is it only like his beef or anything? Or
Well, I
is there a
think
way-
he's sold out. He has all grass-fed beef, so I think he's pretty much sold out.
Gotcha.
He operates under the brand Holy Cow Better Beef.
Okay, cool. Have to check that out.
Yeah.
Because, nowadays people are getting much more educated on what they're feeding themselves and their dogs and their cats
For sure.
and their other animals. And so they're always looking for good places to source their meat, especially, their protein, but also their veggies and all that kind of stuff too. So super
Right
cool,
on.
super interesting. But Grampian, you got any closing thoughts? Very much appreciate your time, closing thoughts, and also where can people find you and get in touch with you?
The Jim Tracy, thejimtracy.com. I'm at the Grampion on YouTube if you're looking for a podcast. Talk to really cool people like Chad Singer of Canine Revolution Dog Training.
100%.
If they are looking for a story about some dogs, chapter 16 of my book, Building Men, is all about the people. It's called Perseverance, and it's about the people who helped me along the way in my dog training adventure, dog handling adventure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Grampian. Really appreciate it.
Hey, Chad, I appreciate you, man. Thanks you for inviting me, and keep building.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. 100%. And with that, Grampian has departed. Very much appreciate his time. A lot of lessons learned that he's talked about, a lot of stories. But it's always good to talk to somebody who does very particular things with their dogs and has achieved very particular things like Grampian has with his hunting and his retrieve training. So, and also we learned about the kennels. It's good to know, don't get those cheap plastic kennels from the local pet store or from Walmart. There are higher quality kennels. I know for a fact that Gunner Kennels is a high quality kennel that can survive an impact. I've actually recently been in a car accident where I had a Gunner kennel in my car, and it was perfectly safe, perfectly fine throughout the car accident. I had someone else hit me, right? So that's they T-boned me. So the Gunner kennel was back. I was in an SUV, and the Gunner kennel was kind of like in the third row of the vehicle. I had the back seats folded down, and the other car was pulling out. I was on a highway, and it smashed right into the side of my vehicle. And all the airbags came out and everything, and the vehicle was heavily indented, but the Gunner kennel was completely intact. So I know for a fact that is a good kennel to use for your vehicle, but I would say if you're looking for a kennel for your vehicle, make sure that it's crash rated. And a lot of the kennels nowadays will explain exactly what they've done for testing. So I thought that was super cool to learn about. You guys know that I've done the dog food tier list video on YouTube if you're a routine listener or a viewer on YouTube. And I have not reviewed Kinetic dog food, but I have heard about it before. I do need to go look into that food in particular, but I believe it is a higher quality kibble. So I would definitely check it out. Take some of the principles that I talked about in the dog food tier list video. Check out that food, especially if you have high drive working dogs or dogs that you're doing high level, activities with. But with that being said, if you guys need dog training, please reach out to us, Canine Revolution Dog Training. You can go to the link down below in the description and request a discovery call or sign up for virtual sessions, depending on what you're looking for. We have board and train programs. If you want to ship your dog from somewhere in the United States, we can take them. We can train them at our training academy, get them back to you. We do private lessons. We do virtual lessons. I can coach you if you're a dog trainer outside of my operating area. I can coach you on what you need to do to, grow your business and all that kind of stuff. So reach out to us in the link below. Also, Canine Revolution apparel on Amazon. You can get a Canine Revolution shirt. You can get a guinea fowl shirt. You can get a chicken shirt. You can get a good to go shirt. We have mugs. We have cups, all kinds of stuff on Canine Revolution apparel on Amazon. So check that out if you're interested in supporting the podcast and supporting yourself as well. And I did write a book. It is the Ultimate Leash Training Manual. It is available on Amazon. You can find it in the link in the description below, or by going to Amazon and typing in the Ultimate Leash Training Manual. Check that out. And for all of our other affiliates, raw food affiliates, dog supplement affiliates, Canine Super Supplements, Monster Canine Toys, Jocko Fuel, All of those affiliates are down in the description below with the links that will get you discounts if you decide to check them out. And don't forget, check out Canine Meats as well. I'll be checking that out myself and getting some samples. So you guys take it easy. Appreciate your support. Thanks for being here. And until next time, this is Pack Talk Podcast. Out.